Good morning, and welcome to worship at Appleby United Church, together while apart. Summer seems to be slipping by, and the stores are filling up with back-to-school supplies, lunch bags, and backpacks. There's still time, though, for more lazy days by the pool, relaxing in the backyard, or, as we're going to see today, taking a trip to the lake. We're going to travel to Val-de-Mont in Quebec, to my daughter Shannon and my son-in-law Trevor's cottage on a pretty little lake, quiet and calm, deep and clear, where loons call and the water beckons to come and have some fun. Carolyn will be joining us again this morning, and I know she would love to visit with you at coffee time following our service. We sit this weekend perched between the Olympics just completed and the Paralympics about to begin. It's a wonderful time to be a Canadian as we watch with pride our young athletes compete, some winning medals, but all showing such determination and heart. As we light the Christ candle this morning, our prayers are for them all. For more than 30 years, the United Church and Indigenous peoples have been on a journey towards mutuality, respect, and equity, towards reconciliation, towards justice. At Appleby United Church, we endeavor to do our part, firstly by acknowledging at the beginning of our services those who lived on and cared for this land long before our ancestors arrived.
We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe First Peoples, covered by the Fort Albany Treaty of 1701. With respect for their history, their spirituality, and their culture, we give thanks for God's gift of gathering in this space on this land. Aho.
Please join me for the call to worship. How wonderful it is when people live together in peace and harmony. It is as refreshing as running under the sprinkler in summer. It is as special as being baptized and anointed as one of God's children. It is as refreshing as wiggling our toes on a dew-covered hillside. The word we hear challenges us to act justly, gives us peace in the struggle. It is as if God has blessed us for life now and life forever. Thanks be to God. Come, let us worship. A special thanks this morning to Phelan and Brian for helping Christine lead us in our first hymn, number 646, found in Voices United, Sia Hamba.
2, 3.
Good morning. My name's Tony Van Veen.
And I am Diane Van Veen.
And we are on the Vermilion River, just west of Sudbury, tubing down the river this weekend.
Prayer of approach. When we have done all we can to make peace and seek justice for all, we can continue to pray with our hearts and our words. When we have done all we can to feed those who are hungry and provide shelter for those who are homeless, we can continue to pray with our hearts and our actions. We, who recognize the Spirit in all, can continue to follow Jesus. We can surround our community and our world in prayer, O God. And when we can act no longer, we can continue to pray, for your Spirit never leaves us. Amen.
Please join me for our prayer of confession. As we share these words, we're all aware that the things that are being confessed are not always the things that we feel, but sometimes they touch on maybe one or two things that we're harboring deep in our hearts that we want to say to God, we're sorry. Forgive us. Let us pray. Gracious and holy God, gathered as your people, together yet apart, we respond to your call. We confess the self that is not always aware of sinning, the heart that is sometimes too hardened to repent, the pride that often dares not to admit it is wrong, the righteousness that seems to know no fault, the callousness that has built and has ceased to care, the blindness that can see nothing but its own will. God, in your healing love, forgive us. The good news is that we are assured of God's pardon and an everlasting love. Thanks be to God. Amen. We've been traveling around Eastern Ontario, and today we're going to cross the bridge and head to Quebec. So come and join me at the lake. I have brought a very special friend along, my grand dog, Yukon. For him, the cottage is his happy place, and he looks forward to the drive and the weekends away. Car packed and Yukon ready to go. Off to the lake. Into Ottawa and then over the E.B. Eddy Bridge. Now onto the highway. Where open road and clear skies beckon. Finally here, time to enjoy the view and a frothy drink or two on the upper deck. Let's take a trip around the lake. Water lilies, birch trees, calm waters, all sizes of cottages. Many islands dot Lake Remy. Fun of all sorts can be had on the water. Motorized docks take cottagers from place to place to visit and enjoy. Birds overhead, loons on the lake, and even a swan of sorts. We leave Yukon behind for a while and head into Wakefield. Covered bridges, beautiful scenery, and an amazing bakery. And then home to sit on the dock and enjoy the view. Before heading back up the stairs to sit and read, or like Yukon, enjoy the view.
This morning's scripture reading is Luke chapter 12, verses 49 to 56 from the New International Version. I have come to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. But I have a baptism to undergo, and what constraint I am under until it is completed. Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division. From now on, there will be 5 in one family, divided against each other. 3 against 2, 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. He said to the crowd, when you see a cloud rising in the west, immediately you say, it's going to rain, and it does. And when the south wind blows, you say, it's going to be hot, and it is. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky. How is it that you do not know how to interpret this present time?
My reflection this morning is entitled, Change is Everywhere. This morning's reading from Luke is a difficult one, difficult to read and difficult to hear. It is high on the list of things we would rather Jesus hadn't said. It's not gentle or meek and mild. It's not even nice. Parents and children are at odds with each other. In-laws do battle. What was he thinking? What did he mean? He goes on to say to the crowd, hypocrites, you seem to know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and sky. How is it that you don't know how to interpret this present time? He was calling for change. If Tony had also read the Old Testament lectionary reading from Isaiah 5, 1-7, that goes along with this, we would have heard the story of a vineyard, one that was carefully tended and cared for, and yet the resulting harvest of grapes was sour. The story that goes on to tell about how Israel's people are like that vineyard. Given every advantage, and instead of using all that was theirs for good, they chose to lead lives that were filled with bad acts against others and against God. God says that the vineyard will be purged. Bad actions will have consequences. We can almost feel God's disappointment and hurt lift off the page. Things must change. But both these stories are very old. Some would say ancient, in fact. Are they still relevant today? Do the stories of the prophets and the Gospels have a voice for us in 2021? Is the vineyard that God created here in this world and entrusted to those made in God's image in trouble? Are families divided? Countries at war within themselves? Is Jesus saying once again, how is it that you don't know how to interpret this present time? Are there prophetic voices today crying out and telling us that a time of purging is coming if we don't become more aware of what we're doing? What have been the prophetic voices in your lifetime? I hear the voice of Martin Luther King Jr. I have a dream of equality and freedom. I hear the voice of June Callwood, who said, I am missing a formal religion, but I am not without a theology. And my theology is that kindness is divinity in motion. The voice of Gandhi, who said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Margaret Mead's voice, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And the voice of Anne Frank, who said, how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. As a teenager, I listened to the peace songs of the 60s, as I shared with you last week, and I heard quiet voices talking about taking care of the earth and treating others with respect. Along with my daughters, I watched Princess Diana use her celebrity to speak out about landmines, and I saw her reach out with her hands and her heart to AIDS patients. David Suzuki has been a prophetic voice for many, many years, and even politicians like Al Gore used his voice with great success. Bono and many other celebrities have spoken out and put their money where their voices are. Our own United Church moderators have used their voices and their position over the years to help the church and the wider world understand that we have a large stake in caring for God's creation. All of these are big voices, prophetic voices, voices who have looked at the vineyard and have not been pleased with what they saw, who looked at the world and cried, "Hypocrites, do you not know how to interpret this present time?" In Hebrews, there's a passage that talks about a great cloud of witnesses who lived by faith. I think if we take a moment to think about people in our own lives, we too could see a great cloud of witnesses who live their lives by faith. A loving parent, an inspiring teacher, a caring neighbor, a coach who lifted up his players, and a child who questioned. Many of my cloud of witnesses have young faces. My daughters who have always stretched me to think beyond the norm and look outside the box. The children that have been shared with me through the churches that I have served, who have asked the hard questions and helped formulate the answers, who looked at big problems and found little ways to make a difference, who challenged me constantly. During Lent one year when I was at Port Nelson, the youth and children agreed to raise money to help support Free the Children and hopefully raise enough to build a school. $5,000 was what they needed. With a lot of enthusiasm and congregational support, they reached their goal quite quickly. The children helped by producing a cookbook of the recipes used in their rotation model and offered them for sale. They raised $750 and were able to take the contributions over the top. Well, this is in itself great news. For me, the prophetic voice came on a Sunday as I presented the idea to them and proudly displayed the beautiful array of colored paper to be used in the project. One of the 9-year-olds looked at the table and said quite simply, "Well, you've just killed 6 trees." I was deflated and yet elated at the same time. Here was someone reminding us to look carefully at how we do things. We talked about it and decided that we would have to replant trees to make up for what we had used, and we did. It has stayed with me ever since. And while in Canada, each summer when I traveled with the youth, we came home to plant another tree to offset our carbon footprint. I drove out there the other day and was delighted to see how big all of the lovely maple trees have gotten. I definitely learned daily during my years in ministry with children. Grant's comment from all of those years ago reminded me of another 60s song lyric, the Joni Mitchell song that says, "They took all the trees and put them in a tree museum and charged the people $1.50 just to see them. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? They paved paradise and put up a parking lot." In 1998, a young boy called Ryan was sitting in his classroom here in Kemptville as his grade 1 teacher explained that there were people who were sick and some were even dying because they didn't have clean water. She told them that some people walked for hours in Africa and sometimes it was just to get dirty water. Ryan realized that all he had to do was take 10 steps from his classroom to get to the drinking fountain to have clean water. He went home and begged his family to help, and his parents gave him extra chores to do to earn the $70 he thought it would take to dig a well. He worked for 4 months to earn that $70, and he says that he thought that that was all it was going to take to solve the world's water problem. He learned that it would actually cost $2,000 to build a well in a place like Uganda, and that the problem was so much bigger than the need for just one well. He started speaking to service clubs, school classes, really to anyone who would listen, and his little grade 1 project has grown to a foundation called Ryan's Well that does amazing work in bringing water to people around the world still today. Autumn Peltier is an amazing young woman from the Wikwemikwan unceded territory on Manitoulin Island, who at the tender age of 12 spoke with the wisdom of someone much older. She said in a speech to the Prime Minister, "I'm going to be an ancestor one day. I'm still going to have great-grandchildren on this land, and I hope they will be able to drink the water." From that day, she has become an activist and an advocate, a water walker, speaking out for clean water, not just in First Nations communities, but across the country. She says that she does what she does because water is sacred, and because water doesn't have its own voice, she wanted to lend hers. At 15, she spoke at the United Nations General Assembly, speaking out on this subject close to her heart. As a country, through our government, we promised to end all long-term drinking water advisories on reserves by March 2021. People like Autumn continue to speak out because it hasn't happened yet. Is it time to add our voice? As you talk about how to seek justice in the world as a congregation, is it time to add your collective voices? I am sure we all remember the young environmentalist activist Greta Thunberg when she set sail from the UK bound for the UN Climate Summit in New York and Chile. The 16-year-old made a speech ahead of departing from Plymouth on a solar-powered racing yacht with underwater turbines. Greta said she was dedicated to doing everything she could to tackle climate change, which was a very big problem. The teenager, who refuses to travel by air because of its environmental impact, said of climate skeptics, "There's always going to be people who don't understand or accept the united science, and I will just ignore them, as I'm only acting and communicating on the science." She added that she thought people's mindsets were changing, even if it's not enough and not fast enough. That's something. It's not for nothing. Greta was asked at the time if she could make the United States President Donald Trump listen, and she answered with a simple no, prompting laughter from the crowd. "I'm not that special. I can't convince everyone," she said. "I'm just going to do what I can do and will have the most impact." And she is just one of so many young people today taking up the crusade to help fight global warming. It seems every week or so, another person has created something to capture the ocean's plastic waste or turn recycled plastics into something new and innovative. In Manitoba, they've even come up with a way to add what is essentially plastic garbage as an additive for paving materials. These amazing prophetic voices in our midst today are not just talking the talk, but also walking the walk. Each small voice raised, asking the tough questions. Each small act done to improve the lot of another or the way we treat the earth. Each small chip that we take out of the world's problems will make a big difference to all of us. Well, I have mentioned youth and children and brought up a song lyric, so it must be time for another quote. Here it is. "The only difference between stumbling blocks and stepping stones is the way you use them." We can look at the rock-like attitudes that can hold us back, like thinking that only certain people are capable of doing God's work, or that the task is too big or that we're too small, and let the problems become a mountain that we can't move. Or we can find some way around or through those problems. Remember that holes are made in rock by simple drops of water, falling constantly on the same spot. We might not make the rock face crumble, but we can certainly be that constant drip, that voice that does not go away. Imagine for a moment a beautiful summer day at the beach, small, smooth stone in your hand. Now, watch it skip across the calm water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 skips before it finally sinks below the surface. Each time your tiny stone touches the water, It sends out ripples, changing the world's surface around it. Your little stone created 7 separate sets of small waves. Now, picture yourself as that little stone. What small waves could you create? What small differences have you already made in the world around you? All of our actions may never amount to a foundation like Ryan's, or nominations or awards like Autumn or Greta, but each of you have acted on something. Call it a nudge or a call or a whisper from God. You have smiled at that person you met on the sidewalk and possibly lifted them out of a bad mood. You have baked cookies for a neighbor, offered prayers for a sick friend, made countless visits to shut-ins, reached out to the community around and offered your help. Your passion for making the world a better place for everyone is visible. And while some of your projects have been boulder size, others are as small as the stone that you imagined that I placed in your palm. God's vineyard is in trouble. And there is division and misinterpreting of circumstances in our world. The words of the prophets and the Gospels are calling to each of us to listen and to act. Make ripples, say prayers, treat others with kindness and compassion, for God's hands and feet are your hands and feet, the face of Christ to all you meet. Be the change. Help make change everywhere. From all that we have been blessed with, we give back through our morning offerings of time, talent, and treasure. Let us pray. Creator God, we are thankful for all that we have been blessed with. Help us find ways to share what we have with others in need in the days ahead. Amen.
Good morning. I have taken some pictures around the Appleby Church, some of the sanctuary, and some of the stained glass windows and the banners around the building. This one is taken just outside the minister's office in the front of the church, and the gardens are looking so lush and full. I've been there a few times and I've seen Jim working, pruning, and taking care of the gardens. I'm not sure if there's other people that look after the gardens, but they are looking great. This week, I'm going to talk about the 2 different streams for ordained ministry for a student, as well as one of the books that we had read this last year during one of my courses. So firstly, a student can go full-time for 3 years, and then afterwards, they have 2 years of supervised ministry under another minister. But in the Maritimes, they were finding it hard to find ministers, and so they worked with the Atlantic School of Theology, and the summer distance program was developed so that students could remain with their congregations that they were serving at the same time as they gained their education. The Master of Divinity Summer Distance Education requires the student to attend in Halifax for a certain number of courses during their degree. The rest of the time, the courses are done online, along with the student being the only minister in a congregation. There's an off-site educational supervisor that AST is in charge of for the first 2 years, plus the lay supervision team, or the LST, a group of 3 to 7 members from the congregation that want to walk with me on my journey into ministry. Now that I'm in my 3rd year of 5 years, the United Church has taken over charge of my education, and for year 3 and 4, they provide an educational supervisor and they offer training and support to the LST. My mother became a United Church minister when she was 50. She went to Emmanuel College and she did all her education first and her placement at the end. In some ways, the summer distance program could be harder for the student to balance church, school, and family life. And in other ways, it allows the student the ability to be with their family and to learn and to actively share what they are learning right when they are learning it, right when it's fresh and relevant. It works great for me, as this is the type of learner that I have been my whole life. Last year, in our supervised ministry course from AST, we read a book called Canoeing the Mountains: Christian Leadership in Uncharted Territories. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this book or read it, but I read it during the summer before the course started, and I loved it so much that I ran a book study during the winter months with the members of my congregation, and a few other ministers joined in. We had some energized discussions about how we could move to becoming a missional church and away from the traditional inward church that many of us have been raised in during a time of plenty. A time of Christendom that we often look back on fondly and lament. A time when the church was full of children, full of families, and a time when people were expected and did make going to church a main part of their family lives. And being church meant welcoming and greeting the people that came to us and entered into our doors. In Canoeing the Mountains, Todd Balsinger explains that in the past, when we have thought of mission, what generally comes to our minds is people going on a mission trip to another country to help out people in need and to raise Christian awareness. Now, this is definitely mission work, but he compares our journey today in a secular society, a time when the majority do not go to church, do not have a relationship with Jesus or with God, to that of the explorers Lewis and Clark in search of the Northwest Passage. They traveled with canoes and they climbed the mountain, fully expecting that what they would see when they reached the top, that they would see water that would take them from the top of the mountains out to the west coast, and that they would float downstream in their canoes. They were shocked and dismayed when they crested the top of the mountains, only to visualize trees and mountains as far as they could see. They had to rethink. They had to adapt their journey. They ditched the canoes, and through the use of horses and a young guide, Sacagawea, a young woman who was a nursing mother, they were able to find a new way of being, a new uncharted way to travel in this uncharted territory. The author of the book is talking about how we as people can move to answer Jesus' call to be of service by partnering with organizations and actively reaching out with our gifts and talents to those around us. At Appleby, the Vision Lead team has been working together and reaching out to you to find Appleby's vision and how Appleby will travel into this uncharted territory, planting seeds, answering Jesus' call to help those in need.
Please join me for the prayers of the people. This prayer was written by our moderator, Richard Bott, and posted on his Facebook page, and I share it with you this morning. I'm searching for rainbows, though the sky is blue. Searching for rainbows from red to violet and everything in between. I'm looking for rainbows outside and in, trying to feel their presence in a world that wants to be monochromatic, so that the light can't be experienced in all its amazing component colors. Open my senses, my God, that I would find the rainbows that surround me, that light that shines, refract it and reflect it in the lives of your people. Oh, I need the rainbows today, my God. I need the dark of the night. I need the noon's high bright, but I need your rainbows today for the hope, for the joy, for the wonder, for the alleluia. I'm searching for rainbows, my God. Let us say together the words that Jesus used to teach his disciples to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Last week, Carolyn told you about our connection to Marvelville. And so this picture is for her. This marks Larry Robinson Road and is just around the corner from the little schoolhouse where we gathered each summer for a big family reunion for years until the last of the 9 brothers and sisters of my grandmother's family had left us. Be sure to join us for coffee time and share some of your family summer stories. Have a great week, everyone. And now, go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. And help the suffering. Honor all people. Love and serve the Lord, rejoicing in the Holy Spirit. And may the blessing of God, the giver of every good and perfect gift, of Christ who summons us to service, and of the Holy Spirit who inspires generosity and love, be with us all. Amen.
My good Lord, he done been here, done been here, he done been here. My good Lord, he done been here, he done blessed my soul and God. Yes, my good Lord, he done been here, done been here, he done been here. My good Lord, he done been here, he done blessed my soul and God. He done blessed my soul and God. Now look here for sinner, just get down on your knees and ask the mighty God I serve to have mercy if you please. I say, my good Lord, he done been here, done been here, done been here. My good Lord, he done been here, he done blessed my soul and God. He done blessed my soul and God. I would not be a sinner, I'll tell